Yep, go for it.
Sweet. Okay, so this is the retrievable curtain rod method, and only using a curtain rod and one tagline, so you don't need a second tagline in order to retrieve all of the hardware. And so just to give a basic explanation of the curtain rod method as well, what we've done here is we've got the curtain rod already up, it's under our tension, and we've got the tagline already across the gap as well. So I'm over here, I've got the tagline connected to the webbing, and at this point I'm going to start clipping carabiners from the webbing to the curtain rod. And I don't tape it in position, and I don't put it between the two pieces of webbing, just around the entire piece of, or both pieces of webbing to the curtain rod. And then at this point, before they start pulling, you want to tape the sharp parts of the gates of your carabiner. And additionally, I've just got a normal carabiner here, but I recommend using 6-inch carabiners because those won't pass over any nuts or splices that you might have in your clothesline. So now that we have those taped off, I'm ready for my the other side of this rig to start pulling in, and I'll let out the webbing. And 50 meters has gone by, so now I'll clip another carabiner from the webbing to the curtain rod, and again I'll tape both parts of the gate of the carabiner, and I'm not taping it open, I'm just putting tape over the sharp parts of the carabiner you can see right here, and that's just so that I don't get any abrasion on the curtain rod or the webbing. And let's just pretend I taped that second bit too. So then they keep pulling in, and let's say another 50 meters has gone by, and I'll clip another curtain rod. And the more carabiners you use to clip, the lighter it'll be pulling it across. It'll add a little bit more friction, but the bigger the loops are, the heavier it's going to be. So we'll clip that on there, tape up the gates again to decrease friction. They keep pulling all the way to the other end, and now they're at the other end, and they clip the static side of the webbing into the other side. And I also put my side into a web lock over here. So now we've got both sides of the webbing in, and let's say that's in a web lock. So now we've got both sides in, and you put a little bit of tension on the webbing just to save yourself work after you detension the curtain rod. So now I'm gonna go to the static side.
Go for it.
Sweet. Okay, so now I'm over at the static side, and when I did this the first time, I had it on, my curtain rod was on polyester cord. So imagine that this is a microtrax right here, still in a progress capture device. So what I did is I took the very end of the cord, which was pretty similar to this amount of length, just a few more feet, and I clipped a carabiner, taped into like a T configuration, T-ish, and then make sure you tape this gate just like we did all the other ones for abrasion purposes. And then you can take this out of the microtraction. It's under a lot of tension, so we ended up having to build a little 3-to-1 to pop it out of the microtrax and then slowly release all of it. And at this point, you can, in order to maintain having a tagline over the gap so that you can easily re-rig your curtain rod if you want to de-rig with the curtain rod method, what we did at this point was we put our tagline onto these carabiners. This way, we can slowly feed out the curtain rod as we're releasing it, one, and then two, like I just said, you can then easily re-rig the curtain rod for de-rig. So at this point, we're gonna tension the webbing just a little bit. That way, the webbing is pulled to one side of the curtain rod. That way you can decrease the chances of getting interaction between your curtain rod and the webbing. And Tom Ducey, our wonderful cameraman, actually just brought to my attention, there's a method that you can do where you extend your carabiners, like think of like a quick draw, but even longer than that, maybe even an alpine quick draw. That way, if you tension your webbing on one side of your curtain rod, you can see my beautiful anchor for my webbing is all the way over there, and my curtain rod is anchored all the way over here. So that if we put a little bit of tension on our webbing, you want to pull the webbing just a little bit? So then you can see it's wanting to pull the webbing away from the curtain rod. And if the webbing were extended by an alpine quick draw on this curtain rod method, then it would be even further away and you'd really decrease the chances of interaction between your tagline and your webbing, which you want to avoid at all costs, because if you're using Dyneema, or even if you're using really any cord, it's when you've got tensions like this, you can just slice through webbing and get to really unsafe conditions really quickly. Alrighty, so now I'm just gonna start releasing the curtain rod, and I'm holding onto the tagline still, and having the home side pull in the curtain rod. And there we go. They've received all of the hardware on their end, and you still have this tagline across the gap, so that when it comes time to derig, you've got your tagline to pull the curtain rod right back across, and now you've got a high line that you don't have to walk across and unclip all of the carabiners. Bada boom, you've got one curtain rod, one tagline, and now you've got a high line in the sky. So this was what I was referencing during the demo of an extension of your carabiner between the curtain rod and your webbing. During the demo, I just had the webbing clipped into this top carabiner, and that allows for a lot of risk for interaction between your curtain rod and your webbing. But by extending your carabiner and adding a second one, you're able to get more distance between your webbing and your curtain rod. And you can see on the far side, I've got the curtain rod at its own anchor over here, and then webbing at its own anchor over there. And you're already getting some separation between the two and wanting to pull sideways. So if you had this extension even greater and the distance between the anchors even further, then you're gonna have a much lower likelihood of any interactions between your curtain rod and your webbing. And everything else during the demo will be exactly the same, and just change the setup and you can decrease the chances of abrasion.